In the previous class, we were discussing something related to the basic texts which are available to study Indian philosophy. So each Veda has got the lineage of its Samhita and Brahmana. So you find, for example, in the Rig Veda, Aitareya, Kaushitaki or Sankhayan, Kaushitaki or Sankhayan, and this is the same thing. These are two Brahmanas which belong to Rig Veda. And the name which you find in Aranyaka, Aitareya and Kaushitaki, similarly Aitareya and Kaushitaki as Upanishad, the name also suggests that they are integral part of the Brahmana, right? So Aitareya Upanishad is part of Aitareya Brahmana. Aitareya Aranyaka is part of Aitareya Brahmana. Similarly, Kaushitaki, Aranyaka, and Upanishad, they are part of Kaushitaki Brahmana, right? And Brahmana is much more elaborate text, which includes Aranyaka and Upanishad. So the elaboration has got a great length, in fact. And therefore, it was thought necessary that those who are not very much interested in looking into the great detail of the procedure for the performance of yajna, but they are interested to know why the yajnas are performed, what could be the reason for that, and if they are performed, whether the result is inevitable or the result is of any worth. So where we find reflection, so those who are interested in knowing the reasons behind the performance of yajna and why they are performed and what could be the basic principle behind the performance of that yajna, for them, certain parts selectively taken out and they are given different names. So Aranyaka, right? And then Upanishad. Then Samveda, similarly, again, it has the same pattern. But interesting thing about Samveda is that much of the hymns which are available in the Rig Veda, they are part of Samveda. Largely, Samveda is called an anthology of Rig Veda. So Samveda has very few mantras which are originally here. Largely, the mantras available in the Rig Veda are used in Samveda. Here, the Samhita part is largely common with Rig Veda. But then when it comes to Brahmana part, there we find interesting elaborations which are not common in the Brahmana of Rig Veda. So Panchavimsha or Tandamaha, Shadavinsha, Chandogya, Jaiminiya, these are the Brahmanas. And among all these, the popular part which is taken out is called Chandogya. And Chandogya is very interesting Upanishad. And this Upanishad involves certain things which are not of much of philosophical relevance in the beginning. So the first section of Chandogya Upanishad is also called Aranyaka. Chandogya, Aranyaka. So Chandogya Upanishad belongs to the Samveda, and the mantras are largely common in the Rig Veda and Samveda. But the procedure for chanting the mantra, Samveda provides a kind of procedure detailing how these mantras should be chanted in the performance of yajna. These are the Brahmanas belonging to Samveda. Since you have Aitareya and Kaushitaki, which are Upanishads of Rig Veda, so philosophical part largely is covered in Aitareya and Kaushitaki. And then what was left in the Rig Veda, along with the original part in Samveda, that is compiled and its philosophical part is extracted out, and that is given name Chandogya Upanishad. Similarly, the Jaiminiya Brahmana of Samveda is developed into two Upanishads, Jaiminiya and Kena Upanishad. Jaiminiya Upanishad and Kena Upanishad. Similarly, if you go to Yajurveda, So this is as important as Rig Veda in terms of the mantra, and very few mantras are common between Rig Veda and Yajur Veda. The mantras which are included in Yajur Veda, they are of much relevance in the performance of Yajna. And here we find different schools within the Yajur Veda. So largely you divide Yajur Veda into Shukla Yajur Veda and Krishna Yajur Veda. And there you find in the Samhita different schools, and these schools are basically nothing but the different patterns of chanting the mantras. So you have Katha school, which is basically Charaniya Samhita. Then the Katha school, which is Kapisthal Samhita. These are different schools, and schools are basically different patterns of chanting the mantras. Maitraniya school, which is including Taittiriya Samhita, then Apastamba school. So up to here you have the Krishna Yajur Veda. This much is Krishna Yajur Veda. Then we have Kanno and Madhyandina, that is related to Vajasaniya Samhita, and this is part of what we call Shukla Yajur Veda. So consider the Brahman part of Yajur Veda. It has Katha, Taittiriya. They are the Brahman part of Krishna Yajur Veda, and Kando, Satpath and Madhyandini, they are part of Shukla Yajur Veda. So Krishna Yajur Veda and Shukla Yajur Veda, they are basically different schools of chanting, and Krishna Yajur Veda has many schools of chanting. Shukla Yajur Veda has less schools of chanting, and these schools are basically the schools belonging to different geographical region of Indian subcontinent. So if you have interest, you can go to the Vedic Heritage website. There you find, for example, in this Kashmir and much of North Indian region, you find Katha school quite prevailing. Similarly, Apastamba school is quite prevailing in Gujarat region. And if you go to south, then there you will find Katha school of Kapisthal Samhita, Charaniya Samhita, etc. So all these schools are available even today, and different patterns of chanting are being taught to the Shishyas in the Gurukulas. Consider the elaboration of the procedure for the performance of Yajna is also given in different schools. So Krishna Yajur Veda has got Katha and Taittiriya Brahmana, and Shukla Yajur Veda has got Kanno, Shatpat, Madhyandina. So this way you find the Brahmanas, and some of the Brahmanas are taken to be the name of the Upanishads. So you have Taittiriya Upanishad, you have Mahanarayan Kat. This is not so known Upanishad, but it is there. Then Shvetashvatar Upanishad and Maitrayani Upanishad. So they are coming from the Yajur Veda. Then Brihadaranyaka. Some of you must be familiar with this name at least. Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and Ish Upanishad. These two are very popular Upanishads from the Yajur Veda category. And Shvetashvatar, Taittiriya and Shvetashvatar, Taittiriya, they belong to Krishna Yajur Veda Shakha, and Brihadaranyaka and Isha belong to Shukla Yajur Veda Shakha. When we say Shakha, that means they are different patterns of chanting. किस तरह से मंत्रों को रिसाइट करना है, वो रिसाइटेशन के पैटर्न्स हैं. बाकी कोई ये नहीं है कि यजुर्वेद उनका अलग अलग है. यजुर्वेद एक ही है, उनको डिफरेंट पैटर्न्स को चैंटिंग और क्या चैंटिंग करेंगे वो भी डिवाइडेड है. जैसे चारणीय संहिता डिवाइड कठ स्कूल वाले पढ़ेंगे, कपिस्थल संहिता कठ स्कूल वाले पढ़ेंगे जो डिफरेंट रीजन में हैं. मैत्रायणीय स्कूल जो है वो तैत्तिरीय संहिता पढ़ेगा, और आपस्तंभ स्कूल जो है वो इसी संहिता, तैत्तिरीय संहिता में से पढ़ेगा। तो उसी में कौन से पार्ट कौन से पढ़ेंगे, एंड ये जरूरी था टू प्रिजर्व द mantras of the Vedas. So it was a kind of division of labor, if you see in the whole of Indian culture, that certain regions were given or taken responsibility of preserving certain things, but each and everything was available at every space, in every space. Just for the sake of study and chanting, they had a kind of classification, but certainly everything was available in every center, and it is available even today. There is one very interesting thing regarding Isha Upanishad. Among all the Upanishads, ईशावास्य उपनिषद आप लोग नाम सुने होंगे. तो ईश उपनिषद is basically the last section of Vajrasaneya Samhita. Samhita is the mantra bhaga or hymn part of the Yajurvedas. Only this Upanishad contains the mantra of the Veda, Yajurveda itself. Vajrasaneya Samhita जो यजुर्वेद की है, वो सारे का सारे को ही हम ईश उपनिषद कहते हैं. Among all other Upanishads, they are part of the Brahmanas, right? They are included in the Brahmana. Only this Upanishad is having the Samhita itself as its content. So each Upanishad is unique among all the Upanishads that it includes the mantra itself. So this is regarding Yajurveda in brief, and then come to the last Veda, which is called Atharva Veda. And here again you find certain hymns, certain shlokas, and they all are divided into 20 chapters. The Brahmana of Atharva Veda is called Gopatha. Gopath Brahman belongs to Atharva Veda. And Mundak, Mandukya, and Prashna, these three Upanishads belong to the Atharva Veda. And as I said, some of these Upanishads, for example, Gopath, there is no Gopath Upanishad. So Gopath Brahmana is there, and it is believed that in the Atharva Veda category, there would have been Mandukya Brahmana or Mundak Brahmana or Prashna Brahmana. So it is believed, but we don't find, as of now, we don't find the other Brahmanas of Atharva Veda. Only Gopath Brahmana is available. And these Upanishads are not basically part of the Gopath Brahmana. Gopath Brahmana, some of the Gopath Brahmana is of course available in all these Upanishads, but they are not directly available in the Gopath Brahmana. Only some ideas, some thoughts are there. So it is believed that the Atharva Veda has got different Brahmana, and other Brahmanas are not available, and therefore these Upanishads are in some sense talking something original about the Veda itself, the ideas of the Veda itself. So these four Vedas are the foundational texts of what we call Sanatan Dharma or Bharatiya Parampara or Bharatiya Sanskriti. And the other things which is included in the Vedic literature, if you look at the names of certain texts called Upaveda, and here you will find variations. I have taken one of that. You will find different listing of Upaveda. The scholars used to use different names. This is the popular classification of the Upaveda. Any other text apart from the Veda is basically a kind of implementation of the Vedic principles, ideas into actual life situation. The Samhita is of course relevant for the Yajna, etc. But the other things which are useful for our life, they are consolidated in different forms. So the Upavedas are basically the application part of the ideas of the Vedas, and the Vedas have got different areas in which their ideas are prevailing. So consider, for example, Ayurveda. Ayurveda is related to health part, right? So we want to have our physical well-being, and whatever is necessary for our health, maintenance of our health. So usually this is assigned to Rig Veda. So we find that the principles available in the Rig Veda are consolidated, which are essential for our health, for our physical well-being. They are called Ayurveda. Then Dhanurveda. Dhanurveda is basically the archery, the Shastra, Astra, etc., which are essential for our protection. And the other things, the instruments which are useful for the different activities of yajna, so they were also included in this. So Dhanurveda is basically what we call Yuddha Shastra. So anything which is essential for the preservation of a particular geography, protection of a geography. So there we find such ideas are consolidated and given a different name, Dhanurveda. Similarly, Gandharva Veda, that is related to music and dance. And this is associated with Samaveda. And you have seen that the Samaveda talks in great length regarding how the mantras should be chanted. They are chanted in a very nice tone, and some dance forms are also associated. So Gandharva Veda is associated with the Samveda. Similarly, Artha Shastra, all the activities, agriculture, other economic activities, they are included in Artha Shastra, which is associated with the Atharva Veda. Then the Vedangas are again the technology part, the method to preserve the meanings and the pattern of pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. So there you will find there are six Vedangas: Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Nirukta, Chandas, and Jyotish. And they are basically the technology part, you can say, of the Vedas. So how mantras should be pronounced, what should be the pattern of pronunciation, the phonetics. So that is included in Shiksha. Kalpa is basically the elaboration and the designing, etc., of the Vedikas. So that is a ritual associated with rituals. Then Vyakarana is basically the discussion on the grammatical structure of the Vedic mantras and statements. Then Nirukta is basically the analysis of the meaning of the words in the Vedas. And Nirukta is, the knowledge of Nirukta is essential to understand the meaning. The knowledge of Shiksha is essential, how to pronounce them, how to recite them. Knowledge of Kalpa is essential to know more about the rituals in a very systematic way. Then the knowledge of Vyakarana is essential to see the pattern of statements and the formulations in the Vedas. Then Chandas is basically giving the nuances regarding the what we call music part of the Vedic mantras. So we do require the knowledge of Chandas, how many letters, how many syllables are included in a particular kind of chanda, so that elaboration is there. So this is also part of the structure of the language, and we do require information. So if you look at the Vedas, There you, in the beginning, you will find that this mantra is this, chanda is this, and there is a particular deity, devata. So this way you will find right in the beginning, if you look at any Veda, and that knowledge is essential. Then Jyotish part is basically the astronomy, the knowledge which is associated with the movements of planets and how the movements of planets affect the human behavior on this planet. So very nice calculations you find here. So Jyotish is again essential part. So these 6 are called Vedanga. They are the Anga or part of the Veda. In what sense? The knowledge of all these is essential to read the Veda, to recite them, and recite them properly by understanding their meaning, right? And knowing well regarding their organization, etc. And this is essential because unless you do it correctly, do it properly, the expected outcome will not happen. Then if you look at the other Vedic literature, so there you will find the Puranas, the Dharma Shastras, which are also called Smriti Shastras. They are very nice story telling methods to impart or disseminate the knowledge which is contained in the Vedas. The masses, the moral masses, the masses which is essential for society, the masses which is essential for engaging in different activities. So all these Puranas, Dharma Shastras or Smriti Shastras are the, let us say, narration part, and they do not propose any new principle, any new doctrine. They basically provide a kind of story, a storytelling method to disseminate the masses which is contained in the Vedas, to inform the general ordinary people, because we can't expect from the ordinary people to know all these technical things, phonetics or grammar or etymology or astronomy, etc. But then, being human, they require all the things, all the benefits which are due to the knowledge contained in the Vedas, right? So they must be educated, they must be given enough of information, enough of masses, so that their life becomes a good life and they live life meaningfully. So Puranas, Dharma Shastras, they are basically the, again, very nice heuristic or methodology to avail the knowledge which is so valuable in the Vedas to common people, to ordinary people, in very simple language, in a storytelling form, right? So there you will find, I have taken some examples, for example, Manu Smriti, Yagyavalkya Smriti, Parashara Smriti, Narada Smriti, right? Manu Smriti is also called Manu Samhita. And you have Puranas, Bhagavad Puran, Devi Puran, Vishnu Puran, Bhavishya Puran, all. There are many Puranas, 18 are prominent. So this way you find the Vedic masses imparted through different stories. Then you find all the things which are essential for administration of justice. So Smriti Shastras or Dharma Shastras are foundational, and the judicial system which is prevailing today more often than not refers to the Dharma Shastras and Smriti Shastras, particularly when the laws, the personal laws related to Hindu religion is concerned. So the judicial administration reaches to all these things, and that is based on something which is the principle of justice. So what we call Indian jurisprudence is available in the Dharma Shastras and Smriti Shastras. And if you look at the comprehensive text, if you want to have comprehensive text which contains all the messages in a very nice form, so you can refer to the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. These two are epics which contain all the essential messages which is necessary for our day-to-day life. And you know, there are different methodologies adopted to make these messages available to the ordinary people, right? And you see, when the people became little ignorant of the main language, Sanskrit language, so you find Tulsidas is coming up with his Ramcharitmanas, which has a beautiful way of putting the things which are available in the Valmiki Ramayana in ordinary common language, right? And Mahabharata is also now translated in almost all languages of India. And there are different versions, but the thing which is essential, that is common, and it is available in public. So to have a brief information regarding all these, you can hit upon these two websites where you will have information regarding the Vedic literature. Now, why I took this much time to briefly inform you about the Vedic literature, because the systems of Indian philosophy are classified with reference to the Vedic scriptures. Normally, we find two very popular classifications of the philosophical systems of India. The Vedic literature is in the center when we classify the systems of Indian philosophy. So the first classification is done like this, that the Shruti part or the Nigama part, the Vedas are also called Shruti, because whatever is available in the Veda, that is all preserved through oral tradition. कोई चैंटिंग करता था, दूसरा सुनता था, उसी को सुन के वो फिर चैंटिंग करता था, तो वेदों को श्रुति भी कहते हैं। श्रुति श्रुति परंपरा से उनका प्रिजर्वेशन हुआ है, उनका संरक्षण हुआ है। The philosophical systems which are directly developed from the Vedas, from the Upanishads, from the Brahmanas, they are called the Vedic systems of Indian philosophy, the Shruti systems of Indian philosophy, or the Nigama systems of Indian philosophy. The systems which are directly developed from the Vedas. And this is a kind of academic classification which is not beyond any questioning. It is very much a questionable classification, that if the Vedas are in the background of the whole of Indian culture, so anything developed in the Indian geography, in the Indian subcontinent, must be coming from the Vedic literature. And this is true. This is very true, that the things which we normally say that this is not Vedic, that is also coming from the Vedas. So the Vedic literature is a comprehensive literature for Indian culture. But these classifications are based on very superficial academic approach, and for the sake of convenience, because the texts which are available, the books which are available with us, we are carrying on, but these are very much problematic classifications. जो आपको किताबें दी जा रही हैं, जो किताबें आपके पास हैं, उसमें ऐसी बातें कही गई हैं, and unless we have a different approach of writing or classifying the Indian philosophical systems, we are just relying on what is available, right? तो ये जो अभी है उसके बेस पे हम बात कर रहे हैं. और जो readily available है. So this is just a matter of convenience. I personally have this observation that anything which is available in Indian philosophy is directly or indirectly related to the Vedic literature. So we don't have anything which is Avedic or anti-Vedic. The very approach, the very classification of Indian philosophical system in terms of Vedic, Avedic, and anti-Vedic is problematic. The classification should not be taken in letter and spirit, right? And consider for academic purpose, we are relying on this classification just to have a perspective, just to have an approach, just to have a kind of methodology to look into the systems of philosophy. तो इस सजेशन के साथ मैं आपको ये क्लासिफिकेशन इंट्रोड्यूस कर रहा हूँ. तो the Vedic or Shruti or Nigama class of Indian philosophical system includes those systems which are directly drawing their insights, their philosophical viewpoints from different parts of the Vedic literature, from different Upanishads, selectively emphasizing certain things and thereby developing a system of philosophy. The systems of Indian philosophy are nothing but a kind of perspective by emphasizing something from the Vedic literature. We are emphasizing certain thing in a Vedic literature and developing one system of philosophy. We emphasize another thing, we consider another thing in primacy, and therefore we develop a different system of Indian philosophy, right? So all these systems are very much compatible systems. They are not conflicting systems, and they are developed because of their different emphasis on different parts of the Upanishads, the Vedas. And then we find, again, this is a part of Nasti agenda, that the Vedas are the texts which are the texts of those who came from outside the Arya invasion theory, right? They came from outside and they dominated the local culture, the local culture which was prevailing in Indian subcontinent. And therefore the Vedas are their texts, and there was something original in Indian culture, and that original is understood as the Agama literature, right? So again, you read this with a sense of doubt that this classification could be very much to introduce a kind of divisive mentality in the Indian population. The Agama literature, what is called, is taken to be a foundational text of the Shaiva tradition, Shakta tradition, Tantra tradition, or what is called Vaishnava tradition. These are the systems which are called Agamic system. Agama is basically the literature which is traditionally inherited from generation to generation. So Shaivism, Shaktism, Tantrism, Vaishnavism, etc. are the systems of philosophy which are developed based on Agama. Then there is something called the systems which are anti-Vedic, Ved Virodhi. And here, these again I say very problematic classifications. We include Charvaka, Buddhism, and Jainism, these three systems of Indian philosophy, under the category called anti-Vedic. And they are the opponents of the Vedic knowledge. And this is again a problematic classification, because whatever we find in the Charvaka philosophy, in Buddhism and Jainism, we find that they are the ideas already available in the Vedic literature, right? So something which is there in the Vedic literature, and as I said, the Vedic literature is so comprehensive that it includes all the viewpoints, and these viewpoints are clearly spelled out in the Upanishads, and the systems which are developed in India They are drawing their basic principles from different Upanishads, from different Brahmanas, right, from different Dharma Shastras, Smritis. This classification that there are certain systems which are Ved Virodhi or anti-Vedic, this is again questionable, but the academics from the beginning of, let us say, the British pattern of education, we find these classifications in that way. So this is one pattern of classifying the whole of philosophical systems of India. There is another pattern to classify the systems into two categories, that is called Astika and Nastika. Astic category and Nastic category. So Astic category is called that category which is based in the Vedic ideas, in the Vedic literature. And here, just to have a neutral understanding of what is Astika, we can consider the systems which accept the Vedas as authority. The Vedas or the Agam Shastras as the authority. And the discussion takes place, the final resolution comes in acceptance of the Vedas or the Vedic literature as authority. When there is any dispute, the final arbiter is the ideas which are available in the Vedas. So the Vedas considered as authority by a group of systems of Indian philosophy, and they are called Astika. And here Astika should not mean that someone who is believing in the existence of God, someone who accepts the existence of divine, etc. That is not the philosophical sense here. Astika means the systems of philosophy which accept the Vedic literature as their final authority for any dispute. And the Nastika are those systems of Indian philosophy who do not accept the Vedas as the final arbiter. Instead, they refer to something else. So those who are critical of the authority of the Vedic or Agamic literature, they are called Nastika Sampradaya or Nastika schools of Indian philosophy. So this is another classification. And if you look at the Astic category, there you include the first two, 1 and 2, first, second, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, Sankhya, Yoga, Mimamsa, Vedanta, Shaivism, Shaktism, Tantrism, Vaishnavism, etc. In this Astic category. And the last one, Charvaka, Buddhism and Jainism, you include in the Nastic category. This way we classify the systems of Indian philosophy. We will have a brief information regarding what are the foundational texts, which are the texts of a particular system of Indian philosophy. So that we will do in our next meeting.